Channel open. Welcome back to WeeklyTrek, a proud member of the Tricorder Transmissions podcast network and presented in partnership with TrekCore.com. I am your host, Alex Perry.
What's today's date? The date.
Today's show was recorded on March 17th, 2023, and is current through the Star Trek Picard episode Imposters, so beware of spoilers. All right, let's get into the show.
Good day, Voyager, and welcome to A Briefing with Neelix. It's a catchy title, isn't it?
WeeklyTrek is a regular news show covering the biggest stories from the Star Trek franchise. We are in a new golden age of Star Trek. There are 5 television shows in production, possibly more on the way, and enough merchandise to fill the Bajoran wormhole. So stick with me, and I'll help you sort the real facts from a lot of the Dominion propaganda that you'll find online. But I can't do this alone, and my guest this week is returning guest Carlos Miranda. Carlos, welcome back to WeeklyTrek.
Thank you very much for having me. It's such a joy to be back.
All right, Carlos, well, you know the drill. I want to know something that's got you excited about Star Trek at the moment. What's got you moving at Warp 10?
Oh my God, so much. And honestly, I'm not usually one to be like at a loss for words, but like I really struggled. There's so much great things happening. And obviously we're going to be talking about Picard, but I have 2 little things that have gotten me really, 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 really excited. And one of them is that we finally got an update on the Voyager documentary come through earlier this week. And I was so excited because in the back of my mind, I was like, wait, what is happening with that? And so it was great to finally get like an update from the crew doing it, and that they were done with kind of all principal photography, and that it's just now like editing and post-production, which I am, I love Voyager, right? And I love the doc that they did for Deep Space Nine. And even if I can't wait to see what those guys are doing. So that's the one, the finally getting the update. The 2, I'm going to sneak in this little one, is that just kind of seeing new starships this week, which I love, Starfleet Federation aesthetics, especially Starfleet ships. And to get a new one this week, it's always going to make my geek heart soar. So the fact that we got an update about the Voyager documentary, and the fact that we got yet another new, and it's weird looking, but cool, Starfleet ship, I'm just really, really pleased.
Yeah, I'm really liking all the new Starfleet ships that we've gotten this season. Last season, obviously, there was a lot of variety in Starfleet ships, but it was the Star Trek Online ships and, some of the ones that we knew already.
Yeah.
But this season, it's been really cool to get some proper early 25th century new Starfleet designs that, as you say, are a little bit different, right? Like the Intrepid, it's a little bit different the way it's sort of shaped. I saw somebody online compare it to a rather intimate product you can buy, and now I can't think about anything else. But it's a cool design. It's a really great shape, and that shot where it kind of rears up against the Titan, so great. A new ship design, one that we had an opportunity to actually get a really proper look at. You can't ask for better than that. And as somebody who has a ticket to the New York premiere of the Voyager documentary, whenever that may be, I'm also very interested in knowing when the thing's going to be done and when it's coming out. I guess they're saying spring of next year for the kind of potential sort of release window that they're targeting at the moment.
Yeah, correct. And just one more thing on the ships. I mean, the fact that it was designed also by just a massive fan in terms of Bill Press. And it's just, I love that. I really love it. I mean, I know that he worked, I think, with Doug Drexler on it, if I'm not mistaken. And it's just amazing. Could you imagine Bill, I've been following him forever on Twitter, and just the stuff that he does is stunning. And the fact to see his stuff realized on screen is just amazing.
Yeah, it's it is every fan's dream, right? To one day be in a position to have a role in the production in some fashion, whatever that might be. And I'm always thrilled whenever fans ultimately land that,
Yeah, correct.
Him, Thomas Maroney, the Star Trek Online ship designer, the guy who made the Titan, the original guy who designed the Enterprise F, Yerk, right? It's now public that he, has had a role in kind of providing some sort of canon help to Star Trek Picard Season 3. So, it's wonderful. It's just really nice to see.
Correct.
All right, let me tell you what I'm feeling good about Star Trek this week, which will be a good prelude to our first story. I think Preemptive Strike is a rad episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. I think it's overlooked a lot of the time because it's the penultimate episode and All Good Things is right after, and All Good Things just is like the best Star Trek finale.
The best, correct.
But I rewatched Preemptive Strike for now obvious reasons very recently, and There's a couple of things about it. One, it's one of the only episodes of TNG where they really use like a decent amount of CGI. Like, CGI was sort of really coming into play right at the end of TNG. And so I really like the shots of the Maquis raiders attacking the Cardassian ship and then them, like sneaking around the Enterprise. Like all that stuff is really great. Like the effects are just really, really good. And I really like that. But like that tragic story for Ro, who's on her own kind of hero's journey because she thinks she's doing the right thing. And she, you can argue to Kingdom Come about whether she is. They certainly do in this week's episode. But just like now knowing the way that story resolves 30 years later, it does make the start of that story in Preemptive Strike and Ro's decision to join the Maquis and to betray Picard so much more meaningful. And like, it actually, like, it's cool. I've done it. It's cool to watch Preemptive Strike and then watch Imposters, just do them back to back. It's fun. So that's what I'm feeling good about Star Trek this week.
I mean, amazing. I haven't done that yet, but it is 100%. As I was rewatching Imposters for our conversation, I was like, I got to watch Preemptive Strike as well. And also, you know what I was thinking about? That Preemptive Strike was directed by Patrick Stewart. So it had to be an episode that was like very kind of close to his heart because he didn't really direct that much Star Trek. So it had to be it was definitely an episode that he spent a lot of time and energy on. So for him personally, it had to mean something. And I haven't heard anybody ask him about that. And hopefully somebody does, because there had to be something particularly special for him because he directed that episode.
And I think that personally for me, Preemptive Strike is the best of the like Maquis setup episodes across Deep Space Nine and The Next Generation. Next Generation had two. They had Journey's End and they had Preemptive Strike. Journey's End is not very good. Preemptive Strike is excellent. And I think Preemptive Strike is better than the Maquis over on Deep Space Nine in sort of establishing, like, I think Ro is a much better character to tell that story about a Starfleet officer who makes a choice to join the Maquis than Cal Hudson ever was. Like, I think the Maquis is good, and I like the performance of the actor who plays Cal Hudson, but it's nothing compared to Michelle Forbes' Ro. And so, like, if you're looking for a Who Are the Maquis episode, Preemptive Strike is the one that I would recommend over any of the Deep Space Nine episodes that talk about it.
Yeah, but also you had, the fact is that you loved Ro, and you had her, she wasn't in a ton of episodes, but you definitely had her arc and had her been following her around since the fourth, fifth season of TNG.
Yeah, right.
So to have her be the proxy is obviously going to be, no shade to Cal, because it is a good episode. I do like the Maquis, and I think most of us who listen to this podcast do. But you're right, it's not Preemptive Strike, and I'm part of what makes Preemptive Strike is that it is Ro, and you like her so much, and you've been following her journey for so long.
All right, well, with that, let's turn to the week's top stories.
There's a war going on, and I'm a reporter.
Well, Star Trek The Next Generation fans were delighted this week to see the return of Michelle Forbes as Ro Laren in the latest Star Trek Picard episode, Imposters. Resolving nearly 30 years of unfinished business between Picard and Ro, the episode provided a satisfying resolution to the Picard-Ro relationship, while importantly also continuing the story of Picard's third season. For Star Trek Picard showrunner Terry Matalas, who spoke in an interview with Collider, there could be no one else other than Ro who could play the part that this episode needed to move the story forward. When asked if any other characters were considered for this part of the story in Picard's third season, Matalas gave a definitive no. No, this story was always Ro Laren. This story was always, the pitch that I had for it was, how great would it be to do a paranoia thriller with someone that you have all this baggage with? The only way to be sure you're sitting across from the person that you hope you're sitting across from is to get through your trauma with them. I thought that if we could pull that off, we'd have a really interesting episode of television. But that required us getting Michelle Forbes and convincing the studio and the network it was the right idea, and educating a lot of people on who Ro Laren is. But no, there was never anyone else other than that. It was Ro Laren or bust. Matalas also named the scene in the holographic 10 forward between Ro and Picard as one of his favorites of the season. I think the scene with Ro and Picard with phasers on each other in the bar is one of the great moments of the season, he said. When they don't know, when they really have to force themselves into this catharsis, it is fantastic. I think both Michelle and Patrick are just on fire. I think it's a spectacular scene. I'm really, really proud of how that came out. I think Cindy Appel, who wrote that, did just phenomenal writing in that, and that's difficult to write. So I'm very, very proud of how that story came out. Matalas also discussed the decision to cast Kirk Acevedo as a Vulcan crime lord, saying, quote, "A Vulcan to me felt really interesting, that there was logic to crime, which he says, that there can be no paradise without crime. So once we had found that, the characters sort of came together. And once we thought about it as Kirk Acevedo, who I had worked with before, once we wrote it for Kirk, there was a danger to him that he could let some anger through. There was something really interesting about a Vulcan crime syndicate. Once we said that out loud in the room, I was like, I haven't seen that before." Carlos, we were just talking about Preemptive Strike. What did you think about Imposters?
Okay, so I feel like we keep saying this every week. It's like, no, that was my favorite episode of Picard.
Yeah.
And it goes to show like what a gift we're getting, right? Like truly, what a gift, right? And, I think it was Michael Kuda that said that they really think of season 3 of Picard as Next Generation season 8, which is, I think, really, I agree. And I think it's very telling. It's also, we don't have to get to their thoughts on seasons 1 and 2, but it is, I think season 3 is definitely feels like this amazing continuation of what happened post Nemesis. And yeah, I do think it's my favorite of the first 6. Now, I've been lucky enough to see next week's episode as well. And I think you have too, right, Alex? And so yes. I think to me, of the first 6, this is my favorite. And now it's my favorite in large part because of Ro. I love paranoid Star Trek, right? I love, obviously, Deep Space Nine is my absolute favorite series. Them continuing that storyline, which is so, dare I say, logical, that there would be, changelings that did not, sign up to kind of Odo's new way of life, and that they would go on and seek revenge and spend time kind of plotting and really realizing what they were trying to do during the Dominion War is just great Star Trek. So to me, the idea, kind of paranoid Star Trek, the fact that you have Ro back, which Ro is hands down my favorite TNG guest character, 100%. And in fact, I think it was Matalas like a year and a half ago tweeted something about like, if you could have anybody back for Picard, who would it be? And I responded with a picture of Rolaren from Preemptive Strike, right? And I just, so to have Ro back is to me phenomenal, but to have Ro back in such a gratifying way, and to have her and to have Michelle bring not just her A game, but it was like her A+ game on fire back is such a gift.
Yeah, it's a wonderful episode. My current ranking for the episodes is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I won't say where 6 will rank yet, but I will just say there's a pattern there and 6 doesn't break it. Like, I loved Imposters. I love the fact they brought back Michelle Forbes. I love the fact that they managed to keep it under wraps, right? Like in the couple of days before the episode came out, right? Like the description of the episode talks about a, prodigal officer from the Enterprise returning. And some people who read that, went to Ro, and so there was a bit of a Ro bubbling around this idea, but nobody knew. They were very smart to keep that out of the trailers, and it totally paid off. Someone pointed out to me that the wig Michelle Forbes is wearing is not the greatest in the world, and now I've been forced to hear that. You're forced to hear that too, because I can see it now.
Yeah,
but everything else about the episode, absolutely on fire, right? That conversation between Picard and Ro, the one in the briefing room and then the one in the holodeck, all-time great scene, all-time great payoff to a 30-year-old relationship. So wonderful we got the opportunity to revisit it. I'm really grateful to them for bringing back Michelle Forbes, right? In this interview, Matalas, kind of hints at it probably was a bit of a process to bring her back, right? And convince her to come back. And notably, we're 2 days after we're recording Friday the 17th. The episode came out yesterday here in the US. There's not an interview with Michelle. I wanted to do this. My top story, I wanted it to be an interview with Michelle Forbes. There's not one, right? So she's always had a bit of an enigmatic relationship with Star Trek. That enigmatic relationship apparently seems to be continuing, but so grateful to her for making the decision to come do this, because it is such a gift to the fans to have this opportunity, and also, right, have it be the perfect character at a perfect moment in time to continue the story of Next Generation season 8, right? Picard season 3 by like, this is not like a detour to go visit Ro that doesn't serve the overall story. Ro plays a really integral role in turning this season from its first act into its second act, of the first act of discovering the changelings and then the second act of doing something about it, right? This episode really feels like it's a heel turn to the back five of first five identify the problem, last five solve the problem. And now it feels like we're on course to start thinking about how to solve the problem. And so, yeah, like, this is a great episode of Star Trek, and like, how wonderful is it? That's my opinion on the rankings. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, right? My least favorite episode of the season is the season premiere. It's a really great episode, but it's not as good as 2, and it's not as good as 3, it's not as good as 4, it's not as good as 5. When was the last time you watched a serialized anything, right? I'm not just talking about Star Trek, but like a serialized anything where for half of the season it just kept getting better, right? I'm really hoping the last half of the season continues to get better. There seem to have been a few people who have seen 7, 8, 9, and 10, right? Mark A. Altman from Inglorious Treksperts has said he's seen the whole season. He said after episode 5, right, his favorite 2 episodes of the season were episode 5 and episode 10. So hopefully that signals really strongly for where we're headed. But like what a gift, what a moment in time. I think I'm just really enjoying this ride that we're on.
No, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that we touched on this a little bit earlier, that there's always been a little bit of like that Harrison Ford energy towards Star Wars in Michelle Forbes, right? Yeah. Like Harrison Ford was always like, yeah, I did those movies like 50 years ago.
What the fuck's a Force Ghost?
Yeah, exactly. And Michelle Forbes has always kind of given that energy. She's not necessarily, maybe she's been negative at some points in the past, but it's mostly been like, I did like 6 episodes of a series in the early 1990s. Stop asking me about it type energy. And I just, I'm grateful that she decided to come back. And to your point, we will never know what was like, anything from like what money was thrown at her, what deals, what happened. But like, I'm just grateful that it happened, because I think that scene in the holographic 10 forward, especially once they decide to put their phasers down, it's just so beautifully directed, staged, acted, like, that just underneath the surface, there is like, I wouldn't say necessarily love, but there's definitely affection and admiration for each other, but neither of them wants to let the other one see it. And it's just so brilliantly done, especially when you obviously, like we all do, and anyone that's listening to Weekly Trek knows, right? Like that, where that relationship went and how it ended 30 years ago, to get this payoff and to come full circle and to have her literally, sacrifice herself in order to give him a chance, and obviously she goes for the warp engine so the ship can't chase them, right? It's just, talk about full circle, talk about a satisfying conclusion. It was just brilliant.
Yes, someone who's much smarter than I am kind of did a compare and contrast between bringing a beloved character back for a very short stint and then killing them in Star Trek Picard from The Next Generation, comparing and contrasting bringing back Hugh and bringing back Ro, and the fact that, both of them end up dying. And like, why are we furious about Hugh? But like, I've seen some fans complain about Ro dying and how, it's just in service of a man's story. And I guess I get that, but like, it's Star Trek Picard, right? Like, the show's about this person. But like, Hugh Rolaren, Hugh was brought back and killed, and the kill was just for the shock value of doing it, right? Like, it did not serve the story for Hugh to die. It was not important to the story that Hugh died. It was just they wanted to make Narissa seem like she was dangerous, and killing Hugh was a good way of doing that, right? Ro's death is earned. First of all, for the reason you pointed out, right? She gives Picard the same chance that he gave her when she came aboard the Enterprise the first time. I mean, incredible, right? Like, what, like wonderful storytelling and, sort of like bringing that relationship full circle. And number 2, it's an important plot point in the story, right? Her death allows for the Titan to escape the Intrepid, and that now our TNG crew plus Shaw and 7 of 9 and the remaining crew of the Titan can really focus themselves on like, how do we fix this problem, right? How do we help uncover and expose the changeling infiltration in Starfleet. And like, that's cool and that's well earned. And so, yeah, I'm sad the character of Ro is dead. And just like I'm sad the character of Hugh is dead, but I'm bitter about the character of Hugh being dead. And I'm not bitter about the character of Ro being dead.
I completely agree. And also, can we just give out a shout out? I think there's been, in my mind, my three favorite kind of dramatic moments in Picard to date are the conversation that Picard has with Ro in this latest episode. I mean, phenomenal.
Yep.
The conversation that he had with Beverly about Jack at the beginning, if I want to say, is episode 3 of this season. And to me, one of my all-time favorite moments of Star Trek, because again, it's been 30 years in the making, is the conversation on the transporter pad in Stardust City Rag. It's back all the way back in season 1 between Picard and Seven. And it's just these super basic in terms of setup and the shots of Picard, and in all 3 cases, a legacy female character, right? But having these absolutely tense conversations that are filled to the brim with Star Trek lore, right? Those conversations don't hit as hard in any way, shape, or form if you don't know the baggage that those characters are carrying, and if you hadn't lived the baggage yourself, right? I remember, and it's not about being an older fan, because now we're at the same age where what people used to talk about when we were younger about the original series. So it's not about that, right? Although I do remember seeing Preemptive Strike live when I was 14, and it just blew my mind, right? but it is, if you know the story and you know the history, those 3 scenes, especially now, and I think Rose and Picard's is arguably the best, maybe, are just it's absolutely stunning. And this is why I think this season of Picard has done so well. It's that, yes, it's a show about a man and where he is today, but when you choose to make a show about a character that is Jean-Luc Picard, like that, you have to steep it in the past, and you have to, I think, do the nostalgia and do it well while moving it forward. And I think the first 2 seasons, that's the whole other podcast to talk about it, but this season has really nailed that. They look to the past, they honor the past, they build on the past, while, dare I say, boldly going forward.
Well, Sonequa Martin Green has offered her first comments since her prepared statement after the announcement that Star Trek Discovery's 5th season would be its last, about the end of the series. Talking to Entertainment Tonight at the Hollywood Beauty Awards, Martin Green, who was presenting an award to Discovery costume designer Gersha Phillips, reflected on the end of Discovery. It's been a roller coaster of emotions, and I haven't even spoken about it publicly yet because it's a lot to process. It's a lot to process, but I am overwhelmed with gratitude and peace, and I'm quite excited, she said. We have a little more to do. There's more to be done before it's time to release season 5 to everyone, but I'm overwhelmed. We're sending all these messages of love and nostalgic text back and forth to each other because it's a lot. It's a lot to feel right now. I'm very grateful. And speaking about the end of the series, Martin Green said to expect the show to go out with a bang. It's exciting to wrap it up, right? And so every aspect of the story in season 5 is that much more special because we know it's the last, she teased, promising, we are going to go out with a bang. You know that for sure. And as to whether she might consider reprising her role of Michael Burnham on future Star Trek spin-offs, remember the Starfleet Academy show has been rumored to be set in the Discovery future, Martin Green said, quote, I would do a spin-off. I love Captain Michael Burnham. I love Star Trek Discovery, the entire company and show family, and I love that the franchise is expanding. So there are all kinds of opportunities, not even just for me, so we'll see. Carlos, how are you feeling about the end of Star Trek Discovery?
Oh, man. Kind of ambivalent, if I'm being perfectly honest. I love Sonequa. I think she's just absolutely a joy of a human being. I love how much of a beacon of sunshine and hope she is for the franchise. And it's true, without her leadership and without Disco, we would not have kind of this renaissance of Star Trek. So hats off 100%. And I like Michael Burnham very much as a character. I think it's rare that my favorite character in any series is the lead or the captain necessarily, but she's definitely my favorite in Disco. But I have to be honest, it's just, I think maybe it's because it's coming at a time where Picard is riding on such a high and it deserves all of our collective attention and kind of joy, that I'm kind of feeling a little bit ambivalent. I think that the show, when it jumped to the 32nd century, it just, and I'm speaking personally, it hasn't connected with me very much. And when there's so much other Star Trek that I think just, that I'm drawn to more, whether it's Lower Decks or Prodigy, which I think are both fabulous, stunning shows. Yeah. So I'm honestly, I think it's time. I think it's definitely run its course, and I'm feeling a little bit like I know that there are fans out there where Disco is their favorite show, and I respect that 100%. But for me, it's just kind of coming at a time when there's so much other amazing things that I kind of haven't thought much about it.
What do you think about so I think for me, I've talked a lot about my feelings about Discovery ending, so I'm not going to rehash those this week. But there's two pieces of this interview that caught my eye. One, her talking about them doing a little bit more to get the series ready to wrap up. There's obviously this question about are they going to reshoot the finale? Are they going to shoot an extra episode to be a new finale? How are they going to do this? And then actually that question about the spin-off was really interesting, right? I love the franchise is expanding, so there's all kinds of opportunities, not even just for me, so we'll see. And you could theoretically see a Starfleet Academy show if it's set in the Discovery timeline, some of the characters from Discovery sort of transferring over to that show and kind of continuing on. First of all, what do you think you want to see from the end of the show, aka how do you want that sort of series finale piece to play out? And then how are you feeling about the idea of staying in that timeline and doing the Starfleet Academy show after Discovery, if that's what, actually happens?
Yeah, I think that the timeline is in and of itself could be very interesting. Just because I feel like it hasn't connected with me personally or hasn't been done as well as I would like, doesn't mean that it can't be, right? 100%, right? There's a lot of characters on Disco that I think are phenomenal characters. I was very upset when they got rid of Tilly. I think Tilly was, a very unique character in the entire Star Trek canon. And I thought it was a shame for the show, for whatever reasons, that they kind of downgraded her role and when she left. But I think that, yeah, look, I mean, I'm always excited for new Trek. I'm always excited to give Trek a new chance. I'm not, on the surface of it, of all the shows that they're talking about, the Academy and the Section 31 show are not the ones that are ringing my bell necessarily. But yeah, totally. Let's see where they go with it. I do love the fact, and I appreciate this very much in this kind of era of Star Trek, that every single one of the shows has a different tone to it, which I really appreciate, where arguably in the 90s, which is kind of to me, the golden era of Star Trek, there were all shows that were basically in the same tone and style. And that's one of the things I love about it. But equally, one of the things that I love about modern Trek is the fact that all the shows are very different. You have a 30-minute sitcom, you have a children's show, you have a drama, you have an action-adventure show, really, in both Discovery and Strange New Worlds. So I'm here for it. It does seem, however, Alex, that they were not expecting it. It does seem that, for sure, that season 5 was never necessarily meant to be the end. And to hear her talk about the roller coaster, yes, you can still have a roller coaster if you know something is coming, but it just seems from various things that they have said, and particularly this interview, that they were not necessarily expecting for this to be the last season. And so it does sound like, and especially with the delay, that they're going to go back and rework elements of it to make it work much more as of a finale.
Well, Gates McFadden, who plays Beverly Crusher in season 3 of Star Trek Picard, has been doing some press to promote the second season of her interview podcast Investigates. The podcast, in which she interviews Star Trek actors about their lives and careers, has started broadcasting its second season and has released episodes with guests such as Tawny Newsome, William Shatner, and Kate Mulgrew. Speaking to Laurie Ulster at Trek Movie about the second season, McFadden reflected on interviewing Star Trek stars that she didn't know well beforehand. There's a part of me that is excited because I want to get to know them, like Tawny Newsome, she said. We had clicked when we met in person, but we'd only met a couple of times. But she was just dazzling to me. She was so open and funny and smart, and the same thing with Jack Quaid. I think the only one that was tricky was Anson Mount, and we both laughed really hard about it when I saw him a few weeks ago. I said, I don't know what happened. There are just times you're talking to somebody in your life and you're like, wait, why did I ask that question? That was dumb. In the interview, McFadden talked a little about her disappointment with Crusher's role in the TNG movies and how that had framed her thinking about accepting a role in Picard. Yes, they knew that I was unhappy with my role in the movies, that it wasn't as interesting as I thought it could be. And I made that clear, but the studios make choices, writers make choices. I may not like those choices, which often I didn't like those choices, but that's part of the situation. So you have to make the best of it. So I wanted to be careful this time that I didn't get myself into something where I'd be disappointed that the part was hardly there. It's also hard when you have so many actors who all want a great story. So my hat's off to Terry Matalas because he balanced it extremely well over the 10 episodes. You have some episodes where you have a small part, some characters aren't in other stories. I'm very, very happy with how Crusher was treated. Yes, I could have seen other things, but so could everyone else. So you make choices. I think it's an incredibly tight 10 episodes. I take my hat off to Terry. I think the story is a really exciting story. And McFadden also talked a little about the debate amongst fans about Crusher's decision not to tell Picard about his son. Well, we obviously had a discussion, she said. I said it's not cool if she's blamed as a selfish woman who just wanted the baby for herself. I absolutely would not have done it if it had been that. I can't fully talk about this though until after more episodes happen. The thing is, it's tricky because there were certain things that they couldn't talk about because they get revealed later. It's going to be a discussion. Some people are going to say Crusher did wrong. Other people are going to say she did right. I think controversy is good in that situation. They're identifying with the character. Carlos, how are you enjoying Beverly Crusher's role in Picard season 3?
I'm all in. I think she's wonderful. I think she looks stunning. I think she's really playing Beverly with a certain life and energy that she hasn't in a long time. And that's not a critique on her acting at all, because I think Gates is wonderful, but it has to be with the material. And it just goes to show you that, you give some of these actors great material and they'll rise up to the occasion. And I think she's amazing this season. I like the story. I think that maybe that scene that some people that she's referring to in terms of her and Picard that I talked about earlier, that I think is stunning. They could have that could have been an hour-long discussion, right? And I would have been there 100% just watching them just kind of discuss it. But yeah, I think it's a great role. I think it was really smart as well, and just surprising to that it's Crusher, who arguably is of all the original big seven, is maybe arguably the one that was used the least. And there are people who probably tell me actual hours in screen time, and they can fight this, but she wasn't in season 2, folks. So yeah, I think she's I think it's great. I think she's bringing a certain energy and life to it. And I think her acting is, especially off of Patrick Stewart, has just been phenomenal to watch. And it's again, I keep using the word joy, but that's how I feel every single time a new episode of Picard drops.
Yeah, like episode 3, that great scene with Picard, kind of having that emotional catharsis of their own related to, Jack Crusher's existence. Episode 4, figuring out the sort of solution to the Titan situation and how they could get out of the nebula that wasn't a nebula. And then this most recent episode sort of uncovering the secrets of these newly more evolved changelings and how their biology functions. This has been a great season for Beverly Crusher. I'm really pleased. And who knows where things are going to go this season, right? We know that they start building in Troy more towards, in the second half of the season, and that Terry Matalas described in that Collider interview last week, the back half of season 3 as being Troy's season. So maybe that means there's a bit less for Crusher as a result, but we've had some incredible stuff already. And yeah, Gates is at the top of her game, and Crusher is an awesome character, and back to being the where the Next Generation ended before the movies with the Crusher character. That is the character that I see in Picard season 3, not the one from the movies who is just there to be the Doctor.
Correct. And I think, but also it's just so wonderful. One of the things I love about this season is just how Star Trekky it is. And I was talking about this to somebody who is a casual fan, and they're watching the season, every episode as they drop, and they're really enjoying it. And I said to them, how nice is it to have Crusher in sickbay? And it isn't just her being the Doctor, but it's Crusher in sickbay contributing to the plot. She's the one that figures out, that the changelings kind of have evolved and can now mimic right down to almost the cellular level. And it's great to see them all back in their Next Generation settings, but at the same time really contributing in a very kind of meaty sort of way to the overall story and arc and momentum of the show.
Well, and lastly this week, 6 months after Eaglemoss went out of business and stopped selling Star Trek Starship models, the company Master Replicas will be taking over selling off the remainder of the Eaglemoss stock. Beginning yesterday, that's Sunday, March 19th, from the day this episode releases, and continuing every 2 weeks on Fridays, the company will be listing 25 new former Eaglemoss collectibles for sale. The 25 items will be available for purchase for 2 weeks and then taken down and replaced by 25 new products. This will include all of the Star Trek Starship models, regular collection, specials, bonus issues, XL issues, Discovery, Picard, and Star Trek Online collections, as well as select other products from Eaglemoss's licensed collections, including Doctor Who, Stargate, The Orville, and The Expanse. Fans who are particularly looking for ships should hurry over to Master Replicas on the day of the new drops to secure their items. You can head there right now and get the first 25. They should be up by the time you hear this, or if you are hearing this weeks later, the next 25 or the 25 after that might be up. Master Replicas can only sell what Eaglemoss had left. They don't have a license to make new models, only to sell the ones that Eaglemoss still had when they went bankrupt. And sometimes that stock is in very limited supply. So once these models are gone, they are gone. The releases of ships will also include some that were manufactured by Eaglemoss but never fulfilled, including the Vancouver class from Star Trek Lower Decks, the Caretaker's Array from Star Trek Voyager, and the USS Stargazer XL from Star Trek The Next Generation, not the Picard version. Master Replicas will ship almost anywhere in the world, and there will be a shipping cost. I don't know exactly what that is because the site from the day of recording is not live yet. So if there's an Eaglemoss ship that you missed collecting back when the company was in business, this might be one of your last chances to get them. While there are active discussions about companies taking over producing new ships, it's unlikely that many of the more obscure starships will be remanufactured. Don't forget, Eaglemoss made 180 ships in the regular collection. There's like 30 XLs. There's like 15 specials. There's probably 20 bonus issues. The kind of ships they were making at the end, right? The ones that two of the bonus issues that they previewed that we're not sure if they manufactured or not were the Prelor ship from the Voyager episode Prototype and the Romulan Scorpion, the little fighter shuttle from Star Trek Nemesis. Nobody else is going to make those, right? Like, it ain't happening. No company's coming in and their first release is going to be the Prelor ship from Star Trek Voyager. Eaglemoss was a once-in-a-generation thing, and it has ended now. Now, that's not to say that there won't be a company that will make a Protostar, a Titan A, an Intrepid, a Dauntless, a Strange New Worlds Enterprise. I think, that is probably more likely than not. But, like, if you're looking for the Pac-led ship, or if you're looking for the Excelsior concept ships, this is probably the time to get them. I doubt you're going to have another chance other than on eBay after these sales are concluded. Carlos, did you miss out on any Eaglemoss products that you coveted before they went out of business?
I don't think so. I did not. I have a lot of them. And in fact, I'm sitting at my desk right now and I'm looking at the first Deep Space Nine. And in on some shelves in another room in my house, I have my two favorite, which is the XL Deep Space Nine model and the XL Defiant model.
Oh, very nice.
I'll send you a picture of it for your show notes, obviously, Alex.
Of course.
But so I have a lot of the Starfleet ships just because, as we were saying, I love Starfleet kind of aesthetics. So I didn't really miss out. I think the ones that I've always wanted, I've gotten. And in fact, not that long ago, I bought a Delta Flyer on Amazon.co.uk. They had one. I think they had one, and I'm sure I overpaid for it. So I will definitely be looking. I am such a fan of what that company did in terms of releasing these ships, just because. You're right. Like nobody else would have done it. I think that when we were younger, I remember collecting all the micro machines because it was really the only way that you could get a lot of the kind of the more obscure ships. And then there was that Japanese company that released a lot these gorgeous little models. I have one of the runabouts that I found in some comic book store. But it's amazing that company did what they did when you really think about it.
Yeah, like what an incredible achievement.
Correct.
That they made all of these ships. I mean, I should know. I own 95% of them, and there's a couple I didn't get. The ones that like the USS Vancouver, Caretaker's Array, USS Nog, like a couple of those that were right at the end. They never fulfilled them here in the US. I might go grab if they don't immediately go out of stock when they come up. But having said that, right, like the ones I have on display are the XL hero ships, right? Yeah. I've got all the Enterprises out. I've got some of the other ships like the Akira class and the Excelsior and the Reliant and La Serena. And I would really like to add the Protostar, the Titan A, these sort of big ships from the shows that we've had to date. So like I really want someone to come in and make more of these things, but I don't necessarily need them to make the Prelor ship. But I do need them to make the protostar, right? Like I really want one of those.
Oh my God, the protostar. I mean, talk about, we've been so spoiled with like, I know at the beginning of the show we were talking about it, but I think the protostar is absolutely gorgeous. And what a like hero ship. I want to get one for each of my kids just so they have it. I mean, they're not going to do anything with them. It's just so I can have multiple copies of it. But yes, 100%.
Yeah, the protostar and the for some reason that I love the Prodigy Dauntless. I think it's great.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, well, we've talked about the facts. And now let's speculate on what's going to happen in the future of Star Trek.
You make some very good points, Captain. But it's still all speculation and theory.
So each week, my guest and I give you a wish or theory we're nurturing about any of the shows or the future of the franchise. So Carlos, let's hear your theory or wish for this week.
Oh, I wish as we're heading into kind of First Contact Day that they announce a 25th Century show. And I know that's like the most basic thing I can say right now. But honestly, I think that all of us are thinking of it, right? Season 3 has been amazing. I would love to see, a continuation 25th Century show with Seven very much at the helm and the continuation of her story and her arc and a couple of the other characters that we are, that we've been introduced to. I think that I think Shaw as an amazing character, but if he's really his namesake in terms of the character from Jaws, it'll be interesting to see if he survives the season. But I think that a 25th Century show with starring Jerry Ryan and some of the kind of newer actors that we've been introduced to, and kind of getting legacy characters here and there. That's really all I want for Christmas, man. That's all I want.
Man, I completely agree. And this actually is really connected to my wish for this week is very, very similar. Coming at it from well, I don't know. I wasn't quite sure how to like classify this as a wish or theory. So I'll throw it out into the world and then you can respond to it, which is like, I really do not want this to be the end of 24th, 25th century Star Trek. I'm increasingly worried that it might be. Not from the perspective of, I don't think they're going to greenlight another show, in this time frame, right? Like there are shows in this time frame. Prodigy, Lower Decks. We don't know about them ending anytime soon. Picard is ending, but like there's always been this push from Terry around like, I want to do more in this time frame. I have ideas. I want to move this forward, but also that like Picard season 3 is the end of a journey for a set of characters and a little bit the end of a journey for an era, right? The end of the journey for Berman era Star Trek, right? Like Mike Okuda saying it's TNG season 8 and like just some of the hints around, like none of us know episodes 7, 8, 9, and 10. Well, unless you're Mark A. Altman or Robert Maya Burnett, and who knows how they got their hands on those last 4 episodes. Well, I'm sure Mark got it from Robert and who knows where Robert got it from. But like nobody knows what's in those last 4 episodes, but just from the way that like crew members have been talking about the way this season marches towards its conclusion, it just has this very much feeling to me of like, it is a conclusion. Regardless of what happens next, it is a conclusion. And I'm so thrilled we're getting it, right? Like if it really is a conclusion and if it really is a way of kind of putting a button on the Berman era of Star Trek, like what a wonderful way of doing that. Nemesis was a terrible version of that, right? Like, Endgame isn't the best version of that because you don't see anything that happens after they get home, even though I love Endgame to bits. Wouldn't change a thing personally. But like as a sort of ending to the franchise, these are the voyages, right? Like not a great ending to this section of the franchise. Maybe Picard season 3 is that, but I don't want it to be. And what I really hope doesn't happen is that with all of the focus on the 22nd century and all of the focus on the 32nd century, that there be this big groundswell of feelings of a conclusion to this section of Star Trek, this generation, what was the next generation, if you will, of Star Trek, with the conclusion of Star Trek Picard season 3, and that the studio then says, all right, we're done with this time period, right? Like it had its time. We've given the fans what they wanted. They got their ending. I will be mortified if that is the case. I desperately want them to continue telling stories in this time frame. This is my time frame as a Star Trek fan. I enjoy the other time frames a lot. I enjoy the other shows a lot, but this is where I derive the greatest enjoyment possible from being engaged with this. And Star Trek Picard season 3 proves that you're not just doing it for me, right? Like the 1990s Star Trek fan who's still hanging around. It is engaging with the culture. It is engaging with the wider populace in a really interesting way. And like, they would be foolish not to capitalize on that. So yes, I 100% agree with you. I want a 25th century show that is a successor to Picard. I want it more than anything else I could possibly want in Star Trek right now. And I'm going to be really sad if Picard season 3, I'm sure it's going to be a great ending, but I'll be really sad if it is the ending to this period of Star Trek and that the studio decides they want to put their focus on the 22nd century with Strange New Worlds and the 32nd century with Star Trek Discovery. Carlos, what do you think?
Honestly, man, I completely agree with you. This is my era of Star Trek. The shows I love, the current shows that I love the most, all three of them are the ones that take place in this era and kind of continue post Endgame. I agree with you about Endgame. I love Endgame. Of all of the three kind of 24th century finales, Endgame is the one that's most rewatchable. It's not the best one, for sure, but it's the one that I will always be like, yep, that's the one I'm going to watch or rewatch.
Yep. I might rewatch it tonight. I'm in an Endgame mood.
And Endgame, 100 after this, let's watch it together. But I completely agree. I have that fear too, but I think the economics of it, it's at the end of the day, Star Trek is a business. It's a product. And this season of Picard has gotten the most buzz. It's also been the most highly rated. Obviously, I'm not even going to pretend to know what the viewing numbers are, but you have to imagine, given all the online chatter, they're decent to good. So I think with all of that, I don't think that we have seen the end of kind of early 25th century Trek. And I think what I hope we see is an ending to kind of this story, and a new generation taking place in this time will come in, and there will be a mixture of legacy and new characters, and it'll really be a mix. But let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens. That's what I want, right? That's what I really, really want. So Lee said last week that Weekly Trek had a habit of we would say things on the show and then they would come true. So with that, making it a reality hat on, let's make a 25th century Star Trek show happen. Let's not cede this era of Star Trek in live action and make sure that there is something to continue doing this and have Terry Matalas in the hot seat to lead it.
Totally.
Do you have a theory or a wish for Discovery, Picard, Strange New Worlds, Lower Decks, or Prodigy that you'd like to share? Tweet them to me at WeeklyTrek or email them to me at weeklytrek@thetricordertransmissions.com, and I might feature your theory in a future episode. Well, that's all the time we've got for this episode of Weekly Trek. Thank you so much to my guest, Carlos Miranda, for joining me today. Carlos, how can people contact you if they want to continue the conversation?
I love Trek Twitter, and I'm at Double Mac with a double C at the end, because I'm also, in addition to loving Star Trek, I love me some coffee, and so come talk to me on Twitter. And you can find this show on Twitter at Weekly Trek and me at Alexander T. Perry. And if you enjoy the show, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on your podcast player of choice. And please check out some of the other great shows on the Tricorder Transmissions. And if you like our shows, please also consider becoming a Patreon of Tricorder, which you can find at patreon.com/the Tricorder Transmissions. And lastly, if you're looking for Star Trek news on the internet, I hope you will turn to trekcore.com. Well, thank you, Carlos. Thank you to all of my listeners. And until next week, live long and prosper.